Sure, here's the English translation of the story. The Eyes of the Forest. The snow-covered forest was as silent as ever. The only sounds were the rustling of the wind and the soft fall of snowflakes landing on the ground. The sky was draped in a faint blue, resembling the dim light of fading stars. A group of 5, made up of friends, had come to spend the night camping here. Little did they know, they were unknowingly embarking on a dangerous journey as they ventured deeper into the woods. Emma had found an old map, a relic from a missing friend. The map not only tracked the paths of the lost but also held a secret hidden deep within the shadows of the forest. It was said that a group of researchers had vanished here years ago. No one knew what had happened to them, or what truly lay hidden within the forest. Emma, driven by an instinctive urge, decided to take a few of her friends deeper into the woods to explore. It all began as an adventure, but they hadn't yet realized how terrifying it would become. The first few days passed like a typical camping trip. Tents were set up, fires were lit, and they spent the nights immersed in the eerie quiet of the forest. But by the end of the first night, something started to feel off. The darkness fell unnaturally early. The forest shadows began to instill a deep sense of fear. One night, Daniel, the leader of the group, heard a strange sound. A whisper, but the voice wasn't anyone's. "Did anyone hear that?" Daniel asked, his eyes wide with unease. "What did you hear?" Emma replied, her eyes growing wide with concern. "I don't know, but something was whispering. Don't stay." Everyone fell silent. For a moment, they all looked at each other, thinking the same thing. They weren't alone. One of them, Sarah, claimed to have seen a shadow moving through the forest. It had shifted between the trees, but no one believed her. The forest seemed dark and ominous, but Sarah's fear began to creep into the others. The next night, while sitting around the fire, the darkness seemed to grow heavier. The air felt colder. Something seemed to be moving between the trees. Emma clearly heard a strange scream coming from deep in the forest, sending a shiver through her body. "Do you hear that?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. Everyone listened, but all they could hear was the howling wind and the soft fall of snow. Slowly, Daniel stood up and decided to venture out around their campsite to investigate. "We should be careful," Sarah said anxiously. "There's something out there." Daniel ignored Sarah's warnings and walked deeper into the woods. As he moved slowly, the moonlight scattered across the tree trunks. As he continued, he heard a sound, a deep, crumpled voice, whispering, coming closer. "Turn back, turn back." When Daniel heard that voice, fear immediately overtook him. There was something out there. He looked around, but saw no signs of movement, nothing but emptiness, and then a scream. As Daniel ran toward the source of the scream, he felt something following him. Slowly, maybe it was all just the result of his imagination, he thought, trying to summon his courage. But the scream wasn't normal. It sounded like the wailing of a beast. As he ran faster, he felt an eerie coldness surround him. The moonlight dimmed, and the darkness grew deeper. Then, suddenly, he saw something that took him by surprise. A shadow moving between the trees. Daniel, overcome with fear, decided to turn back. But the moment everything changed was when the ground beneath him started to give way. The trees and shadows around him began to blur. He saw old stone structures on the opposite bank of a river. The village of Arcanum was isolated, nestled in the heart of an ancient forest known only as the Midnight Grove. Legends told of a mysterious force that lived within the grove, an entity so powerful and malevolent that it had the ability to twist reality, distort time, and manipulate the minds of those who dared enter. The villagers knew better than to speak of it openly, but every whispered tale shared by firelight spoke of a curse, one that no one could escape once they had stepped into the grove after nightfall. Clara had never believed in such things. Her mind was sharp, grounded in the logical and the real. She had come to Arcanum only a few weeks ago, drawn by an old journal she had found in a forgotten library. A journal that spoke of a dark pact made with a being from the grove. The more she read, the more she became obsessed. The journal's final entries were cryptic but hinted at an ancient curse. A curse that could only be broken by entering the grove itself, facing whatever lay within, and discovering the truth of the pact made long ago. Her curiosity led her deep into the heart of the forest on a moonless night, the only sound the crunch of dry leaves beneath her boots. As she ventured farther, the air grew heavier, colder. The trees seemed to close in around her, their twisted branches resembling skeletal hands reaching out to grab her. The path she walked had been marked by faded symbols, signs of an ancient ritual, but Clara's resolve only grew stronger. She had to know what happened all those years ago. Clara's journey through the grove felt timeless. Hours passed like minutes, and every step she took seemed to bring her deeper into a strange, shadowy dimension where the boundaries between reality and nightmare blurred. The forest around her pulsed with a low hum, a sound that vibrated deep in her chest, like the heartbeat of the grove itself. But she wasn't afraid. Not yet. Then, as she ventured into the heart of the grove, she found it, an ancient, crumbling stone circle, covered in moss and dark vines, with an altar at its center. The air was thick with a stench of decay, and an overwhelming sense of wrongness suffused the place. The altar was carved with symbols she recognized from the journal, symbols that spoke of an unholy bargain, a pact made with something not of this world. Clara knelt before the altar, her fingers tracing the markings. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet trembled. The trees around her began to sway unnaturally, their branches twisting into grotesque shapes. A deafening howl filled the air, and the fog that had been creeping around the grove thickened into a solid wall of mist. Then, a voice, deep and otherworldly, echoed in her mind. "You have come," it whispered, sending a chill down her spine. "You are too late." Clara stumbled backward, her breath catching in her throat. The voice seemed to come from everywhere, from the earth itself. The mist parted to reveal a figure, tall, cloaked in darkness, with glowing, hollow eyes that pierced through her very soul. It was not human. It was a creature born from nightmares, a being that existed between the worlds of the living and the dead. "I am the keeper," the figure said, its voice like the rustling of dead leaves. "And you, Clara, have awoken the curse." Clara's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to speak, but no words came. The keeper's form shifted, becoming more tangible, a twisted amalgamation of shadows and sinew. Its fingers stretched toward her, its eyes gleaming with malice. The keeper's voice grew louder, almost a growl. "The curse was never meant to be broken. The pact is eternal. Those who come seeking the truth are doomed to become a part of it." As the figure moved closer, Clara could feel the temperature drop, her breath visible in the air. The keeper's face was a grotesque mask, a fusion of human features twisted beyond recognition. Its eyes were filled with endless darkness, as if they contained the very essence of the forest itself. "Do you hear it?" the keeper asked, its voice becoming a hiss. "The whispers? The voices of those who sought to escape and failed." Clara's mind began to unravel. The whispers were there, faint at first, but soon they filled her mind. Thousands of voices, speaking at once, all desperate, all pleading. She couldn't understand the words, but she felt their despair. The voices seemed to be pulling at her, reaching into her thoughts, breaking her focus, blurring her perception of reality. The keeper moved closer, and Clara felt a coldness seep into her bones. She reached for the journal, her last hope, but it was gone. She couldn't remember where it had gone. She couldn't remember anything. Her vision blurred, the shadows of the grove consuming everything. The air thickened, and she felt herself being dragged into the very ground beneath her. "Welcome to the grove," the keeper whispered, its voice now a cacophony of every voice she had ever heard. "You are one with us now. Your soul will never escape." Clara screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the grove, lost forever in its depths. The next morning, the villagers of Arcanum woke to the sound of a storm raging through the forest. The air felt heavier than usual, and the sky had darkened, as though night had fallen early. The trees of the midnight grove seemed to sway ominously, their branches bending at unnatural angles. The villagers, having lived in the shadow of the grove for so long, knew what this meant. Clara had not returned. The path she had taken was already being overtaken by mist, as if the forest had erased all evidence of her presence. Her disappearance would be added to the many others who had sought the secrets of the grove and never returned. But there was something different this time. A sense of foreboding. Something far darker than before had been awakened. And the grove was not finished with Clara yet. As the storm raged on, deep within the forest, the keeper's hollow eyes flickered with a strange light, as though it was watching, waiting. And the whispers, they had begun again. "Remember, the darkness always holds a story. Until the next terrifying tale, stay tuned with Campfire Horror Story."